All right. Well, I've messed up everything. Hello. Let's do the astounding science fiction tag. It's a tag created by the limitless mind of Michael K. Vaughan. And yeah. I figured I don't know. I'm not like a solid science fiction dude nowadays, but this was science fiction is always kind of like a core thing of me as an early kind of a teenage male reader. And I thought it would be worth doing. And actually, kind of as I was kind of going through these questions, I realized like, oh, actually, maybe I still keep my finger in science fiction. So I might as well give this a try. And it's yet again another good tag for making me think about myself as a reader, because basically being a reader is me. And actually, I'm pretty sure Michael probably discovered me because I yacked on about all of the Barsoom novels by Edgar Rice Burroughs, and I think that's maybe where Michael actually discovered my ugly mug face. So we have that science fiction connection. We had that science fiction connection. So I figured, yes, I will definitely give this tag try. I will talk. Oh my God, I will talk. Oh, you have no idea. I'll let you know how much talking has already been done before I've even started this video when we get to it. So let's start off with a question, shall we? Question number 1. What was the first science fiction book that you read, and what did you think of it? I think the very first science fiction I read was probably A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. Part of her Time quintet, first published in 1962. It was one of those kind of, I don't know if it was scholastic, but it was definitely kind of one of those young kid books that actually that I got to before I was able to kind of get out my own and get science fiction. I kind of love the coziness of that book. I think actually it's funny. It's one of those books where the more fantastically science fictiony stuff was made less of an impression on me, because in rereads, it's like the craziness it goes to the end doesn't have as much of an impact on me as the stuff with the family, and the early parts, and them talking about kind of mathematical physics kind of theories. Probably still go over my head now, but there's definitely that. I definitely didn't finish the quintet because I even though I didn't really catch it in the first book, it becomes glaringly obvious that there's a very heavy kind of Christian allegory thing happening here, sort of along the lines of C.S. Lewis, and definitely as a child I didn't like that. It wasn't that I was probably as atheistic then as I am now, but just it did never sat right with me. The other books I should mention are the Star Trek TV novelizations by James Blish. I remember being in like 8th grade and hiding from bullies in the library, and that's what I would do, is I would read the Star Trek novelizations, which I think they basically would have like a couple of episodes in each book, and James Blish had turned them into just kind of straight stories, which, you know, kids, back in the days before the easy kind of VCR, or you know what a VCR is, but you know, streaming, before Star Trek was on Netflix, before Netflix was beamed into your house, it was a very scarce commodity. And for me, Star Trek was actually probably first and most was probably first experienced as the written word, was written science fiction, is how I first made my Star Trek made its impression on me. So that's always sort of something that I remember of my journey into science fiction. So yeah. Number 2, what was the last science fiction book that you read, and what did you think of it? The last one was The Gangster, which is Scott Sigler, a part of his GFL series, which is a fun kind of half science fiction, half sports series, in the most simplest terms, of following a human quarterback who plays with all these crazy different aliens and all the crazy politics and stuff that's going on there. Before, and it's funny because I was thinking, oh, how much science fiction do I read? It's like, well, actually, I read Space Opera by Catherine M. Valente, which is great language stuff, but in the end, it just I did the characters weren't active enough. Network Effect. Now this is where I can get my science fiction creds going. Network Effect is Martha Wells and is I think it's number 5 in the Murderbot Diaries, and this won the Hugo Award this year for best novel, and also they have a series award, and the Murderbot Diaries won for the best series. So I accidentally have read all of this Hugo Award love stuff. The Hugo Awards is basically kind of like science fiction fans vote on what they think is the best of the best. It's kind of a People's Choice Award, but these are science fiction fans, so they have their own particular kind of like standards. I love science fiction fans, so of course I'm going to think it's better than the People's Choice Award. Does the People's Choice Award actually still survive? I would have no idea. I'm completely out of touch. Yeah. So that probably gives you the thing of where I am in my science fiction. It's like I'm not like super up on science fiction, but I'm still there. And hey, I read the Hugo Award winning novel for the year. I accidentally have read. And at the moment, I'm reading The Future Home of a Living God by Louise Erdrich, which is kind of is literary person doing kind of science fiction. It's we sometimes that hardcore science fiction fans get riled. Don't talk to Steve Donahue about Cormac McCarthy's science fiction work. He'll have words for you. Okay, number 3. If you love science fiction, what made you love science fiction? And yeah, this is one of these. This is the question where, oh God, pull up a chair. Because I was thinking about that, because I was thinking it's like, oh, it's adventure, it's info dumps, it's imagination. And then I was thinking, it's like, no, Jay, think about where you were. I was a young dude who was miserable in school, probably not that particularly, just feeling pretty crappy about myself. And I was looking for somewhere where I could find authority. I could find kind of voices that would speak to me with a kind of authority. And these are kind of like male voices, I have to say. This is me growing up in the 80s. I was looking for male authority. I was looking for kind of father figures. And you know what? Science fiction had those father figures. They had the people who knew what was wrong and how to fix it, and they were going to fix it. And they had heroes that knew all that stuff. There was a kind of a nice weird kind of a power fantasy there, but a power fantasy of the mind, because like I knew skinny little teenager that the body wasn't going to be my, being a strapping guy was not going to be my thing. I was like, oh, maybe I could be smart. This whole being a He-Man thing isn't working out for me, but maybe I could be smart. And it's funny because I look at something like stuff like Jordan Peterson and people like that today, and how they can really appeal to young males who just don't have a direction and maybe don't have that kind of guidance in their life. And there's a lot of young fans who kind of latch onto that. And it's like, I always try and go from the thing of like, yeah, Jay, never look down on those people, never scorn them, because I think about how I latched on to people like Isaac Asimov, like Robert E. Heinlein, probably the uber example, as somebody who was going to give me some kind of a security, some kind of a path forward, and that it was going to be a sexy one where I was going to be awesome, They're in there. So, if I'm being honest, I love the infodumps. I love the adventure. I love the kind of thinking of different ways. But it was like a part of it was like I'm miserable in the way that I am, in the miserable young 80s teenager. I was looking for that not only escape but a blueprint of like how to be. And I think that's why I love science fiction. That's why I love science fiction at that time. I think that has changed. I think my particular neuroses and insecurities have shifted, so they're slightly different. So there maybe isn't that kind of emotional tie to it anymore. And to be honest, science fiction has become much more richer and much more inclusive, and has actually opened up more, that there's far more to excite the mind, that you don't have to bring as much of that emotional weight into it. And I mean, and this is not to say that at that time there were not fucking kick-ass female and people of other things. These were straight white males that I was obviously latching onto because I was growing up in a super sexist, homophobic society. And it's like, God, I think I read a bit of a Samuel Delaney book at the time and was like, had serious kind of reactions, and put it down and just didn't come back to it, because that I was not ready for that. Definitely. But so there was so much more that I was missing at that time. So that's not to say it wasn't there. It was just I was definitely, of a majority of people at that time, not seeing it, not getting to see it. And is it so awesome that we have that today. That is so great. That's the reason why science fiction is still alive. For all the people who say, "Oh, I want the old stuff," it's like, yeah, if you wanted the old stuff dead, if you wanted science fiction to be dead, you would only have the old stuff. It's like, we want the new voices. We want really, really different ways of looking at stuff. So yeah. Love science fiction, and yeah, that is probably the question that's kind of at the core of this tag for me, I think, that I wanted to talk about. Because yeah, I get it right there. Number 4, what is your favorite science fiction movie? So, okay, you got to split this up. There's what is your favorite science fiction movie? The one that you're going to tell to impress your friends, which is probably going to be, for me, is Solaris, 1972, directed by Russian director Andrei Tarkovsky, from the Stanislav Lem novel, which actually, I tried Stanislav Lem, but I've only ever been able to find kind of like really crappy translations, and I've never actually connected to him. But this movie, it's like an art movie. It's these beautiful long takes, really getting you into kind of this kind of how science fiction can flip things and make you see things differently, and also just make you understand the very limitations of being a human being. Wow. So there's that, which I probably have only seen once. And then, what movie have I seen probably like 5,000 times, and is just like, oh my God, it's like if it came on the TV, I would sit down immediately and start watching it from wherever. That would probably be Starship Troopers, the 1997 Paul Verhoeven take, which is definitely taking Robert A. Heinlein's original book and kind of peeling off. Starship Troopers, the movie, is a fascist fascist propaganda film. Want to know more? Click here. It's like, it is a movie that is said, like, it posits that the viewpoint of this movie is like a fascist state, and they're making this movie. And within that, Paul Verhoeven just slips all this kind of ridiculous stuff while taking the original story of Robert A. Heinlein, who's got much more. Robert A. Heinlein is not a simple man when it comes to his views on politics and stuff like that, but he's definitely probably he's either right wing or he's libertarian. He's somewhere in there. Paul Verhoeven is definitely coming from a I'm going to make a fascist movie and make it super gory, and he's somebody who survived. Paul Verhoeven himself, Dutch Dutch filmmaker, survived the actual Nazis. So when he's talking about fascist state, he knows what he is doing, and does it deliciously and cheesily, and just an amazingly fun movie. Probably runners up in this thing would be Under the Skin and Ex Machina, which are two movies that are still in my brain, which are actually they're science fiction movies that have actual, those thought experiments, but also just kind of amazing, kind of just interesting character work. They're very much interested in. It's interesting. One, Under the Skin is sort of very much of a kind of, an alien using the sexiness of our favorite Avenger. God damn it! Names, of course, immediately slip my brain. Black Widow, using that to lure males, using males' kind of reaction to that to lure them to their doom. Well, Ex Machina has got to be just a thing about just kind of also the male gaze being dissected in the guise of a computer Turing test movie. Both movies are kind of really working with the idea of kind of masculinity and male drive in those books, or conceptions of. So yeah, that would be that. Number 5, what is your favorite science fiction TV show? Well, sheer hours, it would have to be all the Star Trek iterations. Well, not all of them. I have bailed on some of the more recent ones, though. Under the Decks I quite like. We could be here for hours if I went into that. So there's Star Trek. Yeah, let's just take that as a given. We already have me reading the novelizations, me sitting with my friends and just making relentless fun of the original series when we first saw it, and all the music and what we thought as the overacting at the time. I've actually kind of there's that, and then probably being true Star Trek fan with the Next Generation, and then really loving Deep Space Nine, and then falling off of Enterprise. Oh, and there's the Janeway one in there too, which actually now in retrospect seems a lot better now that you see what comes in the modern era. But yeah, okay, all that. Probably Battlestar Galactica, which is Ronald Moore, who was very frustrated working within the confines of Star Trek, getting to do Battlestar Galactica. If it stops with them on the dead planet, like if it had stopped there, I think that would have been the perfect endpoint. We're in that wasteland, and it was like, that would have been the perfect stopping place for me. If it had stopped there, that would have been a perfect series, but it didn't. It went on, so not that perfect. Black Mirror overall, as kind of like, anthology show. Utopia, the British one, which I only ever saw the first season of, which maybe that's why it's such a perfect series for me, is because I've only seen half of it. It's perfect because I don't know if they messed up. I think it got canceled. I don't know if it made it through its full season, first full second season. I love the soundtrack to the British Utopia too. God, I love that soundtrack. I just play that all the time. Which is super creepy. Just playing it on headphones, so not around my victims or anything like that. I've got a love for Torchwood in the Doctor Who side of things. I love Torchwood. I only ever really enjoyed the rebooted Christopher Eccleston Doctor Who, and then after that I completely fell off it. I only stuck around for the kind of various Torchwoods, which kind of it was very, very cheesy and very kind of adult, inappropriate and stuff. Let me just check and see what. Oh, thank you, Theo. I have eyeglass things, which I'd prefer if he didn't eat. Theo loves eating stuff. Okay. Let's skip on to another category. Another question. Number 6. What science fiction book do you feel should be read more often? I hate should questions, Michael. You should not do should questions, Michael. a science fiction book that I love, but most people never seem like, even the people who love it seem to think, oh, I never want to read that again. I have actually reread it, and it still really, I feel like it still holds up. Is Broken Slate by Kelly Jennings, a 2011 science fiction novel with really, really, really crappy cover, which probably shows you probably how it's probably released by some kind of independent press, but you can tell just by that cover is not the greatest. But it's what, taken from his family's merchant ship at the age of 14, Martin Eduardo endured years in the brutal contract labor system on the planet Julian. Now a contract rebellion brews. And this is very much like, and Julian, as in Julius Caesar, a very kind of, this is a kind of a Roman constructed society, which, you know, the Romans were a slave society. And yeah, it's really well done. It really gets into the kind of the how slavery kind of that twists the psychology of both master and slave. Uh, um, Martin is gay and has relationships, has a sadomasochistic relationship with his master, and has other kind of more healthy relationships, but also those are still twisted. Yeah, it's a really really well constructed story, which, yeah, it sticks in my head. There is a follow up to it which I still haven't read yet, though disappointingly I think it skips forward like several thousand years, so we're losing. I think we lose the characters of Broken Slate, so maybe that's one of the reasons I didn't go back to it. But yeah. So I really love this. This is the book that I think, hey, why not give it a shot? Maybe if it's cheap somewhere. I don't know if it's cheap anywhere. Number 7. What is your favorite science fiction story? This is the question that took me the longest, because the story that immediately came to my mind was the novella "The Persistence of Vision" by John Varley. It was published in 1978 in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. And it was like that. I think I immediately thought of this one. It's probably because I haven't read a ton. I don't read a ton of short stories, but this one really had an impact to me, and that immediately came to mind. And it was like, but the thing is, when I answered that, I was like, I haven't read it in a long time. So maybe before I start trumpeting how great of a story is, I should go back and read it. So last night, that's what I did, is I sat down and I read it. And I have some thoughts, which, if you want to see a 20-minute video of me just talking about this one novella, you can go and look at it. It is a great story. It's a great story that is also repellent. and it's repellent in a couple of ways, but at the same time still retains its power over me. At the same time, I have a feeling that anyone who came to the story now would probably just go with repelled and toss it aside. But if I'm going to be honest about myself, I still hold the story. I still love the story. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone unless they why would I wouldn't recommend this to anybody. Unfortunately it falls into the Robert A. Heinlein school of old dudes with young women, young underage women, which is a real shame. That probably, well, no, it's not a shame that cuts it off. That's unfortunately, if you're going to put that in your book, then that's in your novella, that's what's going to happen. But yeah. But I still love the story. The final lines of this story still give me the shivers, which I have to own, while still saying I think it's it's reprehensible. It's still, while still saying it's reprehensible. So that's my very it's that kind of goes to that kind of thing of complications with literature, which is good to have. It's good to I think for myself that's the good thing to hold in me is hold in me that you can love something and also fucking hate it at the same time, and I kind of treasure that. Um, but never undersell the shittiness of something, that's even shitty parts of something, even if you love the great parts of it. Uh, yeah, yeah. So that's my answer to that question, Michael. Yeah. Number 8. What is your favorite science fiction book? And I'd have to say probably it was when I was a teen. It would have been Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein, 1961 book of this boy who he gets he gets raised by Martians. This is back when Martians were, there was the kind of the very much Edgar Rice Burroughs thing that Mars was a lush kind of place with air and had fauna, and there was Martians there, and this boy gets raised by Martians, and then he comes back to Earth, very much in the kind of spirit of the free love moment. He ends up being kind of setting up a cult, becoming a quasi kind of Christian Christ figure in this book. And I was super into this book when I was a teen. This was like my jam, and wow, I'm so afraid to actually go back and read this. It's just like kind of just refreshing myself with plot synopsis and stuff like that. I just like, and I've heard people talk about it and go, oh yeah, that's in there. Oh yeah, that's in there. All the kind of the creepy uncle stuff about Robert A. Heinlein definitely comes in there now. So that was then. Now, I'm trying to think, because I enjoyed like Alistair Reynolds novels, though the characters don't stick in my head from those books. But maybe I at some point I should reread them. But if the characters don't stick in the book, then I don't know if I actually care. Octavia Butler is so amazing in all of. It's hard for me to pick one of her books because she's just such an amazing science fiction writer. Nnedi Okorafor is kind of a recent one who I have frustrations with, but is like, wow, she is quite the amazing thing. Theo is up on the chair, eyeing what he's going to get next. Here, I'm just going to take that away from you. All right. I'm going to go with it's kind of one kind of a series of books by Jeff Vandermeer. Jeff Vandermeer now is well known for the Southern Reach series, but starting with Annihilation, which was turned into a movie, which I feel, for my tastes, he went too far into the literary side of science fiction, to the kind of he went overboard. For me, he went overboard into the literary side of thing. I like my science fiction maybe with some lit stuff, but I love it with also kind of pulpy, dark stuff. And for me, that would be his Ambergris series, which starts with the City of Saints and Madmen, 2002, goes on to Shriek and Afterward, and Finch, his detective novel, which that is totally a detective novel, kind of a pulpy detective novel thing of this mysterious city of Ambergris, where it's also kind of probably considered the new weird, but it's definitely kind of got like kind of a. I'm going to go with, for me, that is the kind of science fiction I go into, just these odd unknowable worlds. I mean, maybe this is I don't know. Maybe this is fantasy science fiction. There's some kind of a weird crossover point in them where you just don't know where you are, and that's where I like to be. Oh, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention, because this is called the Astounding Science Fiction Book Tag, that Michael's referring to Astounding Magazine, which was in its great heyday of the kind of the golden era of science fiction, was edited by John W. Campbell, who published all the big big great guys of science fiction, that there is a biography, a group biography called Astounding: John W. Campbell, Isaac Asimov, Robert A. Heinlein, L. Ron Hubbard, and the Golden Age of Science Fiction by Alec Navalor Lee, which was published in 2018. And it's a group portrait of all these four dudes with warts and all, and lots of warts. And I mean, you do not expect I was not surprised that L. Ron Hubbard comes off as sort of a sociopathic, flim flam artist. John W. Campbell it was kind of a racist guy who had a very fixed idea of what science fiction was, and he molded his writers into what that was, and he rejected everything else, and he narrowed what science fiction was for a lot of time in there. Well, probably, I mean, maybe promoting it, but is somebody who the science fiction community has been learning to kind of has been reevaluating what his place is in science fiction, a place where a lot of people are now in the tent that he probably would not have been particularly he would not have been interested in wanting their voices there, but they are here now, and that is so amazing. Robert E. Heinlein actually comes off, to my point of view, as more of an interesting, complex character. Isaac Asimov was really, unfortunately, a groper harasser of women, which is really shitty, but it's also one of these things that's important to know. And, yeah. It's a good book to read. It's a good book to read because it really gives you a portrait of this time, and it gives you a portrait of this time that isn't whitewashed. When I grew up in the 80s, it was very all hagiographic, all these wonderful guys, everything's wonderful, we don't really talk about L. Ron Hubbard because he's gone off to do Dianetics and to end up founding Scientology and all this stuff. We don't really talk about how that could be kind of one of these spin outs of venerating the great men, that one of these great, not so great men actually founded a freaking religion. Is just is not is one of those things that you think that's like that maybe does play back into what I was talking about at the beginning of I was looking for guidance. Is L. Ron Hubbard veers far more over into what we have nowadays, of people who are very eager to take advantage of people's wanting guidance, to say, yeah, come and I will guide you, give me all your money, kind of guidance, kind of that sort of thing. So yeah, that is, sorry, Michael, that was me yakking on, and I've got 20 more minutes of me yakking on about that goddamn novella, The Persistence of Vision. If you'd like to hear that, I'll put link at the end here and link down below or whatever, if you want to hear me yak about it even more. Yeah, thank you for the tag, because this is science. I love science fiction, and science fiction is a large part of me as a reader. It's not everything of me as a reader now, but it's definitely, it's in there, and it's kind of me as a person too, for the good and ill. So yeah, thank you, and more videos later.